They started having conversations about there's nothing else we can do past this. And they were prepping my parents and my wife to say goodbye to me. Coming back stronger doesn't always mean physically, or doesn't always mean in the exact same ways as before. Stronger. That idea of you're not done yet resonated, because that's how I felt in the hospital. You're not dead yet. You got work to do. Go and do it.
Time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Okay, guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Maynard, strength coach, physiotherapist. I always screw that one up. I always screw something up in the introduction, so I purposely need to make sure I do it.
It's consistent.
Every time now to be consistent. Competitive powerlifter, husband, father, survived a rare life-threatening disease, HLH, which we'll discuss, legally blind, still competing, and I don't want to say you live by, but the message that you're trying to put out is you're not done yet.
Correct.
All right, where I want to jump off is I've been trying to figure out how to kind of introduce what I want to say. I've had a lot of powerlifters on the podcast that have broken all-time world records, that basically have made their whole life and identity about it. Mm-hmm. And which is fine. I did that for a lot of years. A lot of people do that for a lot of times. And at a certain point in time, they forget why they got into the sport in the first place. Either if it's powerlifting drama, stagnation, not being able to progress. And this would apply even if it's not the top powerlifters, because it gets hard, after a while, it gets hard. And what I ask them to do many times, it's just, especially with the top lifters, because they end up, and I guess this would still apply to just general lifters, because you're not going to travel that far outside of your own demographic just to be able to compete. Yeah. Is to go to a local meet that's kind of outside your demographic and just watch what's going on. And you'll watch, people pull 315 for the first time, or whatever the kilo version, 337 with the collars, whatever it's going to be. And then it kind of reminds people of why they got back into the sport in the first place, because at its root, that's what powerlifting is. Mm-hmm. It's the embodiment of getting stronger and progressing and moving forward. But people can get lost in that or forget that, because after a while, it's not easy, to progress, or you hit your, I hate to say this, but it's true, your genetic ceiling, where it becomes even harder to progress, or you're at such a high level that you're only around other people at the high level, and it becomes daunting and like work.
Yep.
So where I want to jump off of is, this is from your last meet, right? Your second.
Yeah.
Actually, it was your last meet, right?
It was, yeah.
All right, so go ahead and play this real quick. And what I want people to think of is you're sitting in the audience watching this, right? You don't know the backstory. This is where I'm going with this. You don't know the backstory of that at all. So what was that? Go to the next slide. Just go to the deadlift.
It was like 398 or something, just shy of 400.
Yeah. Go to the third one, the deadlift here. And that's what,
507.
507. Okay. So you don't know the backstory. You don't know anything. You're just watching this dude pull 507, right? It could have been people before you. It could have been people that are after you that are pulling 800. Most people sitting in there are just watching the deadlift. You see where I'm going here.
100%.
Right? And a lot of times that deadlift, and this is a good pull. I mean, this is a decent pull, but that could have been a 300-pound deadlift. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But this deadlift significantly means more, right? Why?
Because that's a great lead-in. Because if you rewound the clock a little more than a year from when that pull happened, because this was August 10th of 2024. So if you went back to February and March of 2023, I was very close to dying in the ICU. And those videos, those ones, I forget, some of those came from my wife. And you talk about being in the crowd, like that was my wife and my daughters. That was the second meet that my daughters had ever seen me compete in. And it was especially significant because, again, a little over a year before, they were the ones who didn't know if I was making it home. Like my wife was the one who was watching me in the hospital bed, starting off kind of looking similar to how I look now. I was 194, and a competitive powerlifter. Then when I staggered into the into the ER first, we didn't know what the hell was going on, but we knew that something was very wrong because my skin was already yellow. And this was already 3 weeks into what started off as a typical cold or flu. It was early January. My wife and daughters had the same sort of symptoms. We shrugged it off, and then they got better and I didn't. So then came the process of going to my doctor. We thought it was a sinus infection because I had some sinus symptoms too. Got some antibiotics and went back home. My lymph nodes started swelling. I had insomnia for the first time in my life. And when I say my lymph nodes were swelling, it felt like, you ever know those topographic maps you run your fingers over the mountains? Mm-hmm. It felt like that on my neck and my shoulders. So something was wrong. Went to a small hospital because we live out in the middle of nowhere, which was fun coming here today. I was like, this is literally where I live at home, which is great. Went to a small hospital and they diagnosed me as having mononucleosis, the kissing disease. Mm-hmm. That was weird. How the hell did I get that? My wife hasn't had it. We've been married for however long. But gave me a sleeping medication, sent me back home. I think it was like 3 or 4 days after that first ER visit. It was in the morning. I hadn't slept again and I'm feeling progressively worse. And my wife looks at me and she's like, "You're yellow." And we both think, oh shit. Because I'm a physiotherapist by trade, and like I know that's wrong. I know that my liver's going through hell at this point. Don't know why. So we go to the larger hospital a little further away from where we live, and we parked probably like 20 feet from the ER doors. And like I've been into lifting, both powerlifting and bodybuilding, some athletic stuff since I was 12 or 11. I really didn't know if I was going to be able to finish the walk from the van into the ER. And when I did, I talked to the nurse who was doing the triage stuff, and she took my BP and my heart rate. My heart rate was like 200 just from standing up and walking. My blood pressure was spiked. Talked to the next nurse who was registering me in there. I'm like, I'm going to pass out. And I do, or pretty damn close. So they admitted me into the ER, and through the next 6 days begins this like mad dash to figure out what is going on. And it's specialist after specialist, and they're taking blood draws, and I'm already on oxygen at this point because my blood oxygen levels are dropping. My wife told me later, because there's a big chunk of time, which we'll get through, that I wasn't conscious for. So I had to be backfilled in by my wife, my parents, people who were there on the front lines. She told me that the most terrifying moment in her life, I think it holds the title for the most terrifying, was seeing me on a bed, in her words, her big, strong husband, too weak to get up and go to the bathroom on his own. And not knowing why, not knowing what we could do about it, not knowing if this was going to get better, and her feeling completely helpless. So it was all these tests, it was all the scans, and I'm getting worse and worse. Like I'm actively bleeding in my throat. I had what they call hemorrhagic tonsillitis. And I had difficulty breathing and all of the things. And then it was 6 days later that they put me on life support in the ICU. And I have very fleeting memories of like the day or two before that. They've got 2 levels of the ICU. ICU A is the most intensive. I remember being in ICU B and having to go to the bathroom and like pressing the call bell and getting a nurse to try to come and get me to the bathroom. And I pissed myself on the commode because I couldn't hold it and I couldn't get to the bathroom. And like, I couldn't control my bowels. And so they had to put me in diapers at this point. And then it was ICU A on life support. Because my liver had failed, my kidneys had failed, and I needed dialysis.
Were you still conscious at this point?
Not at this point, no. Oh, yeah. No, they put me under heavy sedation.
Yeah.
And they needed to shove a ventilator down my throat too. And I was on life support for 5 weeks in total. And it was hell, man. Because again, my wife told me after, like, the night that they put me on life support, it was my wife and my parents. My parents dropped everything and came running, and they were like trading off 12-hour shifts. My wife was on shift when they put me on life support. And one of the nurses came over and she's like, look, you can't be alone tonight. Like, do you have somebody you can call? And like, very, very motherly. She's the veteran who's seen a bunch of this stuff. And she's like, don't be alone. And, yeah, my medical team was trying to do everything they could at this point, which for what I had, I guess it's important to mention, HLH, which stands for Hemophagocytic Lymphohistiocytosis. It was described to me as an autoimmune-ish condition. It's not a true autoimmune condition. It's what they call a hyper-inflammatory disease. And it can be caused by, or it can be primary, which has a genetic component. You'll usually see that in newborns and infants. Or it can be adult onset, which is what I had. For adult onset, it can be caused by either a cancer, a different autoimmune disease, or an infection. The infection was my, hand of cards, because of the influenza A that I got, which then caused the mononucleosis, which then caused the Epstein-Barr virus to ramp everything up. And HLH is this big immune system storm where the immune system attacks healthy cells, especially red blood cells, and it leads to organ failure. And it's like, optimistically, depending on the source that you're looking at for mortality rate, we're talking about like 52%, as high as 75% for mortality rate on that stuff. So like, at best, coin flip decides whether I come back to my wife and my daughters. And through those 5 weeks, I don't have conscious memory. That's like the black hole that one of the nurses told me I was going to have, because, spoiler alert, obviously I made it through.
Yeah. Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure, Dave. But yeah, this was a mad dash of chemotherapy, corticosteroids, of when you're staying in the hospital for any length of time, but especially the ICU, and especially when you're immunocompromised like I was, all the other hospital-acquired illnesses come through, the infections. So like, I had an infection of my leg, which turned into this cellulitis and this wound that's on the inside of my left thigh that they had to treat for a whole bunch of time after. I don't know how well we can see that, but I got a skin graft in my left hand from an IV that didn't work. It malfunctioned. And just like, through all of this, especially the first 2 to 3 weeks, I think the first 2 were the worst. I was still getting worse. And to the point that despite all of the treatments and with the treatments, like the chemo, they couldn't even give me the full dose because I was so sick at the time that I couldn't handle it. It's a weird thing to have, like, poison, which is what chemo is. And thank God we have it, but that you need to stay alive or to have a shot, but like, you can't get what you're supposed to get because you're just that sick. I had a tube down my nose into my stomach so they could give me medicine and to give me some nutrition. But with all the inflammation in my gut, what they gave me, I couldn't absorb very much. And through these 5 weeks where I'm not eating, not drinking, and I can only absorb a little bit of nutrition, like, I walked into the ICU or the hospital weighing about 194 pounds and about 6 feet tall. And by the time that I came out of sedation in the ICU, I weighed 150.
Pull up that image real quick, just for some context.
Skin and bones, man. And when I did, as we pull that up, as I came out of sedation.
So is this image here while in sedation or coming?
This is out. This is out. This is the first day that my kids, that's my daughter Ellie. That's the first day they came to visit me in the ICU, which would have been in March of 2023. I'll never forget that day, because I mean, at this point, the miracle had already happened. What I mean is, through all the treatment, I was still getting worse. My medical team, phenomenal. I'm eternally indebted to all of them. They gave me the last treatments of chemo and I still wasn't getting better. They gave me the other steroids and monoclonal antibodies and I still wasn't responding the way that I needed to, or the way they were hoping. So they started having conversations about like, there's nothing else we can do past this. We're gonna start conversations about how we can keep him comfortable. Like we were having palliative conversations and they were prepping my parents and my wife to say goodbye to me. At this point, this would have been in February.
So what was the conversation before it sounds like they put you into an induced coma,
yeah.
Right? So
Great.
so there's a conversation that's happening before that.
Yes.
What was that conversation?
We need to keep him safe and we need to chill him out because, one, as best I understand it, with all of the inflammation and like the raging disease processes, they needed to try to reduce the amount of metabolic and stress load on my body to give me the best chance, as good of a chance as I could get to like make it through and let the treatments do what they needed to do. As they were pumping me with whatever medications they had, both treatment wise and sedation, because they had me in different levels of sedation. The nurses and doctors explained it to my parents and wife. People respond differently to the sedative drugs. Some people get super chill and docile. Other people get paranoid. I got paranoid to the point where I told you I've got like this black hole of my memory. I had these really, I've never done psychedelics, but I imagine this might be similar to what psychedelics feel like. These weird dreams of being kidnapped and taken off to the circus, being a prisoner in a pirate ship and being strapped down. And I found out later I was being strapped down because I was pulling my tubes out because of the paranoia that the sedatives gave me. So, and it happened more than once. So the conversation with my parents and with my wife was that like, look, we need to sedate him more. We need to restrain him to keep him safe. And my wife talks about, I think when they were having this conversation, I was like conscious enough and I could hear some of the conversation. I was yelling from the bed, like, I don't consent, which made this like more heartbreaking for the people who had to make the decisions, my parents and my wife, because like on one hand, I don't want that. On the other hand, I need it. And I don't know what the fuck's going on.
What were the conversations that were going on with inside your own head? Granted, when you're super sedated, you can't really count that, because you can't remember it. You're just blasted.
It's actually
but there are times when there is more conscious thought.
Yes.
What's going on there?
So on the front end, before the black hole, when I was still not fully conscious, I was very mistrusting of people around. I couldn't see very well. I mean, I'm legally blind now. At the time, my vision was really dim. It's like if life had a dimmer switch and you turned it down 50 to 60%, that's what was going on. And it was really blurry. So extra mistrusting of people and what was going on because I couldn't see. And my wife and my mom were both there that night. This was shortly after Christmas. So my wife and I had watched like a terrible like Hallmark Channel Christmas movie called Holiday in Handcuffs, to the point where like we got 15 minutes in and I told her like, I can't, we got to stop. Just let's go watch The Proposal again. And in that paranoid state, I needed to make extra sure it was my wife and not someone who was impersonating her. So in my super raspy voice, I'm like, what was that really? My wife makes sure that she emphasizes this because I emphasize the word really a lot. Really bad movie. That was my two-factor authentication for my wife. That's one of the last memories that I have before it's just the weird dreams, which was my brain processing people taking care of me and holding me down and like stuff going on around me during sedation. And then my memories kick back up as they start to bring me back out when I had quite miraculously stabilized, because they gave the last treatment. Again, they were starting to have the conversation around palliative care. Faith plays a big role in my life and my family's life. And
that's what I'm trying to get to. during this phase.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would believe you if you sat here and told me at no point in time did you ever think, screw it, I just give up. You know, because it's those are miserable times to be in.
Yep.
Pain, you know, and all the things that stack up. The pain, the thought that, you know, are you going to need care, you know, for the rest of your life that's going to go on to your family, and you don't know what that level of care is going to be. And it would be easier. You get what I'm saying? 100%. Easier just to go. And then there's the counter to that. That, you know, it's the other voice that says, what are you talking about? Like, you know, so that's kind of where, like, how they're going back, you know what I'm saying? Like, everybody's going to go back and forth with that. But not a lot of people will speak about it.
Oh man. Yeah. Because it's important to speak about that. Because I very much had the angel and devil on my shoulder. When I came to, this is after 5 weeks of life support. I'm still in the ICU. I'm still fucking strapped down to the bed. I wake up in truly somebody else's body. I can't speak because I have the trach, instead of down my throat, it's through my throat now. I'm hooked up to all sorts of monitors and tubes and lines. I'm hooked up to a catheter, and like I'm not even pissing on my own volition. My left arm is blackened from that IV. I've got wounds, and I'm just like, I'm skin and bones. Like it really felt like being trapped in somebody else's body. And it wasn't like I gained consciousness and I knew all the things that were going on all at once. It was this progressive thing of like starting to piece it together. I'm still in the hospital and like remembering bits and pieces of what happened before being unconscious, and that came back more and more as time went on. And one plus of being a physio is that like I understood what was going on more than most would if you're not a healthcare professional. That was also the downside, is that I knew how fucking awful this situation was. And I didn't know how my family was. I didn't know how my coaching business was doing, how my clients were being taken care of, because I've been out for 5 weeks. How's everybody doing? There's this race of like, where's everybody? What's happening? Are they okay? I want to get home. Can I get home? What's my status? All of the things. And then coupled with the alien environment of being in the hospital, with so grateful for everybody who was involved with my care, from doctors to nurses to PT, OT, speech language, so many amazing people. They're coming into the room. You've got no privacy. You can't have privacy in that state. But to your point, it was in those first weeks where I got my bearings and I knew what was going on, that I was just like, Lord, take me now. You know, like it was absolutely this tug of war, because on one hand, I wasn't dead. I have my wife and my 3 little girls to get back to. I'm going to fucking do what I need to do to get back there. What do I got to do? Let's figure that out.
Dave Tate here from elitefts to talk to you about bands. We've been a supplier of bands for almost 2 decades now. So I've known my way around the band landscape. When I'm talking about bands, I'm talking about floss bands, long bands, short bands, bands you can use for resistance training, mobility training, body weight training, and flossing. One of our most popular bands, or actually our most popular bands, are the long bands. The long bands are typically used the most with squats, bench presses. Our floss bands are bands that you wrap around the joint to be able to help with mobility, circulation. And the short bands are designed for shorter range movements, bench press, deadlifts, and a lot of times people will use them with resistance machines to help accommodate the strength resistance curve. Head over to elitefts.com and look for bands in the toolbar or blowout menu.
And the very next breath or thought most days was like, fuck, you're looking up this mountain that you got to climb to get back to like.
What that original phase, did you even, because uncertainty's so big.
Yeah.
Right. So when I guess what I'm asking is when you don't even know the mountain is there to climb.
Right.
Right. Because when you're coming back through, you have no idea.
Sure.
Like, am I in hospice? Like what? Because at least when you can see the mountain, you know it's there to climb.
Yeah. It felt like I knew the mountain was there, but the clouds were covering. I had no idea how high it was. And I just knew it was like, it was going to be no small climb if I had, a snowball's chance in hell of getting to the top. Because like, if anybody wants to know what helplessness really feels like, not that I've got a monopoly on helplessness, but to be entirely incapable of doing anything by yourself except for thinking, which you can't even do to the greatest extent. That's where I was, strapped to the bed. I couldn't get up to save my life. I remember distinctly holding my phone. It was an iPhone. And like my fingers were so weak that it kept falling onto my face and my chest. I couldn't see the screen properly because my eyes were crossing. I couldn't speak. There were days, like my wife and again, my parents, I'll never be able to thank them enough for just being there when I wasn't conscious, when I passed out after my chemo treatment because it made me drowsy. But one of these times my wife was there with me and I didn't want her to go. I couldn't even write because I had this tremor every time that I tried to move and like use my hand to do stuff. It was my nervous system with everything it had been through. So like I tried to scribble "Don't Go," or I tried to scribble the song titles by City and Color or John Mayer that I wanted to listen to at the time. Couldn't do that. Couldn't say shit. And to be cleaned, unless somebody's been through it, like when you got to take a shit, that's a bedpan. They lift you up, lift your butt up, they put a pan underneath you, take a shit.
Kinda.
Yeah, you can.
It also isn't like a normal shit.
It's not. No,
it's liquid.
It is liquid. Exactly. Which they were pumping into me. Exactly. To sit up, they had to use the lift, the Hoyer lift, and it was the whole rigmarole of getting a couple nurses to put this mat under you and roll you and lift you up, and then sitting in a chair, just like we're doing now. I could have done this for probably 10 minutes, and then I'm exhausted because just fighting against gravity to stay upright, like that was the workout. And that was quite literally my rehab for a good chunk of time. So going back to the mountain, like it was in those first few weeks where, I wouldn't believe me either. If I was like, and then I decided I was going to fight and everyone clapped. It was absolutely not like that. Like thinking about the biblical story of Job, where all these horrible things happened to him. And, I think it was his wife who's telling him like, just curse God and die. I absolutely wanted to. And I was fucking mad at God for like, why this? Why like this? Why now? Why me? So much grief and loss because like, I lost my entire identity. I'm not not the strong powerlifter that I was, not even at home. I can't trust my body for anything. I'm not coaching. All these things that I built pride and attachment to and derive value from.
But even deeper, you can't be a husband or a father either, even though it is who you are.
Exactly. Well, going back to that picture, man, because like, okay, this is again, like probably March. I've been out of sedation for a little bit. We're planning for the first visit for my kids. Because through all this, my wife became a single mom overnight. She took me to the hospital and I didn't come back. And she had to explain to my twins, who at the time were 5, because I went into the hospital the day before their 5th birthday. And then my youngest was not yet 2. She had to explain to them why dad wasn't coming home. And then she had to try to prepare them for like, okay, we're going to go see daddy. He doesn't look like you remember him. I had no hair anywhere thanks to the chemo and all this stuff. And I was a skeleton. So this day, I knew they were coming, and the nurses, some of them were just incredible. One of them, her name was Amy. She was very much like a motherly kind of woman. She's they are trying to cover up all the machines, because like the ICU is a scary place for a kid. So they're covering up the machines. They're trying to quiet things down as much as they can, while still making sure I've got what I need to be, alive. My left arm was blackened again from the IV, so they covered that with like a mesh sock, so my kids couldn't see that so much. They got me up in the chair. They covered me with that blanket, but I still look like hell. And I'm terrified, because I have no fucking idea what they're gonna think. And like, are they gonna recognize me? Are they gonna want to come to me? I can't blame them if they don't, because I'm not who I was, And I hear the little sparkly shoes coming down the hallway, and they're standing there with their mom, and they're terrified. They don't know what's going on, and I can't ever fault them for it. The hospital had a really cool organization of volunteers that like would organize crafts and stuff as family and kids came to see loved ones. So like they went down a side room, they did some crafts. They weren't ready to come to me though, which again, that's understandable. Ellie, that's her in the picture. She's one of my twins. She's very nurturing. She's the most like me out of all three. She was the first one to come back, and she's with her mask on and just like really hesitant. And she slowly comes over to me, and I just reach out my hand to her, and she takes it. I just fucking break down. And later, once I come back home, like talking to her and talking to Mary Claire, my other twin, they were like, yeah, Daddy, you looked really scary, but I still knew you were my daddy. Hearing that changes you. And it makes the pain all the worse because you're not there. You can't be there back home. You can't be the image of the father that you've tried to be up until this point in their life. But they still see you. They still know there's still what makes you in there, even if you don't look like what they're used to.
At what point, and I assume it was, after you came out here, did you feel like you were no longer declining, but actually stacking wins? Because it's, it's still, like a up road type of thing.
Very much. I think the point, excuse me, that I would have said that, it was probably getting into like March, because it was very much stop and go, where like day to day, like they're still actively trying to fight infection and try to monitor my medications or my response to medications. So like some days I pop a fever and we don't know why, and like they got to roll me down for a CT or like some additional testing. And like there were some days where I'm like, I did my rehab. Rehab meaning like the PT crew came through and got me to stand up for all of 10 seconds before my blood pressure skyrocketed or dropped or whatever the fuck. And then also my rehab was like eating ice chips, because not eating or drinking or speaking for 5 weeks, like any other muscle, your esophageal muscles and throat musculature, they atrophy to the point where I was unable to eat or drink, and it was unsafe for me to eat or drink, which I had the worst food fixation ever. Like through my journey prior to this, like I trained for bodybuilding for a long time, never competed, but I tried to get fairly lean. I was sub 10% body fat at one point. And like, I remember that food fixation, because like it also for me led to a disordered eating pattern of binging. It's never diagnosed, but it definitely was that pattern for me. This brought back that food fixation, because all I wanted, man, was like a cup of ginger ale, and I would have murdered for a cup of ginger ale.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, that sounds like it's doable though.
That's it. So, but to get back to safely eating, drinking, swallowing, you have to eat ice chips. You have to retrain the muscles with something that when you inevitably aspirate, when it goes down your trachea into your lungs, it's not sugary, it's not food, it doesn't have the same risk of developing pneumonia. So back to the point, there were days where like I did my physical rehab because I stood up and I took 3 steps, and I did my ice chip swallowing 3 times a day, and I did my bed exercises, and I talked to my hematologist, and I talked to, you know, whoever else was coming through, and like I crushed it. And the next day, just beyond my control, like the fever spiked, bad reaction to medicine, whatever. Just this roller coaster, which is like, it led to this thing where, again, it wasn't, in some ways, like I made the decision that I wasn't done and I was going to do whatever I had to get home. And like that singular decision was made, but I had to remake it day by day and sometimes hour by hour because of just all the shit that was going on and how much it fluctuated wildly. But it took until late March, like we were getting close to Easter, when I would have said, yeah, I'm stacking wins. There's still the ups and downs for sure, but like I'm better than I was. I can see the pattern. I don't know how long it's going to take till I get out of here, but like I'm on the path here.
So what's that self-talk look like during that time? Because you're saying day by day, hour by hour.
Yeah.
You know, so is it correcting yourself? You know, like, I don't want to do this anymore, stop, you know, or is it just one day of, I'm just done with this, and then waking up the next day? It's a you know what I'm saying? Because you're developing mental resilience, I suppose. Mm-hmm. Actually, you're not even developing it. You got to find a way to use it.
Yeah, I already, exactly. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
It was all of that. It was all of that because, excuse me. There were days where let's start here, actually. The inner circle of people, my parents, my wife, my former business partner, still one of my best friends. His name's John Flagg. He's fantastic. And a couple, like 2 of our mutual mentors, they were the inner circle. Because I worked alongside John and our mentors inside of a healthcare business incubator called the Honey Badger Project. I was on staff with them, so they knew what was going on. They kept it pretty quiet, and they told whoever needed to know. Well, it wasn't a secret. Like, my wife was on social media just telling people, hey, look, Jared's sick. Here's what we know. Here's what we don't know, all this stuff. But they were the ones who knew the gory details of like 50 to 75% chance he's not coming back. So once I was more stable and I could hold conversations, like I had to relearn how to speak because they had the valve still in my throat from the trach. And that was a funky experience because once my oxygen levels were stable and we didn't need that to be hooked up to the ventilator, then they would cap it and they have to like wean you off of it just to make sure that you're fine. You're not gonna, pass out or whatever. But I had to learn how to speak with a valve. And then eventually when they took it out, there was just a hole in my throat covered by a bandage. And it was like, you remember those commercials of smoking and the people that have the valve? I'm like, don't smoke. Mm-hmm. You got to push it to speak. That was me. Mm-hmm. I had to hold the hole so the air would be forced through my larynx so I could speak. So I had conversations on the phone with John and Cedric and Frank and people, like just holding this so they could hear me better on the phone. Those people, particularly Frank and Cedric at the time, they were like, look, your problem is not going to be working. You're good at working. Your problem is going to be resting. There are going to be days where like you have to be the phone plugged into the wall. And that's just as important as the work. Because if you're tapped out, like you can't do shit. And I needed to hear that from them. People that I trusted, people who knew me well enough to know, yes, my strengths, and that if left to my own devices as a recovering perfectionist, type A, oldest of 5 kids, like I'm just going to work myself into the ground, or at least that's been my default for most of my life. And like you actually cannot, if you try that, you are going to burn out and you're not going to get where you need to go, or at least nearly as well. And like there are people, particularly your family, who are counting on you for this. So I needed that reality check, because then that allowed me mentally to recognize when, on the shitty days, when the fever was spiked, when like I was exhausted, I could not beat myself up and think like, oh, you're being a pussy, you gotta get up and do the work. But to look a little bit more objectively at it and be like, you're exhausted. You almost died. Chill today, watch some movies, tomorrow we're back at it. And like that was the feedback loop. And that's what it had to be. And sometimes it was the day, sometimes it was like, this hour I feel great, and the next hour I feel terrible. And like I have to have the inner conversation again. That's how that went. And that was the process through the rest of the hospital, which like I went in January 23rd into the ER, and I was in there until May 1st. Came off of life support end of February, early March. And I distinctly remember being, through March, it was learning how to sit, learning how to stand with the PT crew that came through. And then as I became more stable, not well enough to go home, but I didn't need to be in the ICU anymore, they would move me up the level from the most intense ICU to the less intense, and then eventually to the oncology ward where I spent most of my time recovering. When I was in the oncology unit, the PT that I had, she was the grizzled Vietnam vet of PT. Like she'd been around, she was afloat. She went to different different hospitals. I forget her name now. I got to try to figure it out. But like she was no nonsense. Like we got to know each other and like each other as we worked together. But like she was no nonsense. Like, look, we're going to go to work, to the point where like all due respect to proper veterans, I called my PT sessions D-Day. I'm like, it's 2:00. D-Day's here. Let's go. And that looked like me sitting up at the side of the bed and doing some sit to stands. Like forget squats, like under a bar. Like this is now my reality. And like, this is hard. And then learning how to take steps. Like I distinctly remember standing up at the side of the bed and the PT's telling me, okay, now come up on your toes, do a heel raise. I'm thinking heel raise. Nothing's happening down here. Mm-hmm. Which again is like part of the frustration, because through all of my life, I grew up as a fat kid first. I had next to no self-confidence. I was picked on for my weight at school, to the point where like beautiful summer days where most kids are like out playing with the neighborhood kids doing whatever. Like I was just hiding because I was sick of the rejection. And I'm like, I don't want to be rejected, so I'm just not going to be in the situation. Didn't think it in those terms, but that's what the pattern was. So my parents saw that. They knew that was something they wanted to try to change. So they tried to find something for me to do. It was basketball we tried. I played for a season. I wasn't great. Tennis, like different things. Kung Fu was the first thing that I really took to. And it could have been because I watched Power Rangers growing up and I was mad my parents didn't name me Jason after the original Red Ranger. That was a legitimate gripe that I had with them. Could have been because I got to hit people and no one got mad at me. But like, that was the first time that like I was doing something physical, which wasn't purely physical. Now I find a lot of parallels, especially with powerlifting and individual sport, because there's the physical game, there's the mental game, and they're always intertwined. It was discipline, it was integrity, it was teamwork, it was, all these things. And by being in this environment that I wanted to finally be in, where I wasn't being picked on and like people didn't give a shit whether I was chunky or not, I was showing up to do the same thing that they were, and we were working on it. And like there were people who were much better than I was, people who were worse, and like we're all just trying to get better. And I took to it like a fish to water. I was invited to what they called the Black Sash Club, which was this additional class where they took students from different levels who showed really good work ethic and initiative. You got to do advanced stuff, learn advanced forms, learn weapons. I was on the demo team, so we'd go to like malls and stuff and like put on demonstrations to attract people to come to our studio. So like this was the first time in my life where I went from being the reject outcast to being like part of something, and not only part of something, but like invited to the higher levels and like, hey, look, we see what you're doing. Come do this other stuff if you want. Sweet. So I did that for 3 years, and then I stopped. It's very anticlimactic. We went on a trip. So we paused my Kung Fu and I just never went back to it. I was about 13, 14. But at this time, I watched Remember the Titans for the first time with my family for family movie night. Only my dad had played football. And I am Canadian, but we do tend to play with American rules. And we love our football up there. We had to stop the game sequences every 5 minutes to like ask my dad, wait a second, what happened? Are we happy about that? Is that a bad thing? What does this mean? Hooked me. So God bless my dad. He took me and he signed me up for a summer camp. I went out for my school team. This would have been my sophomore year, grade 10 year. I played for 3 seasons. I was not a good player. I worked my ass off though. Like I put everything I had into every practice and every block. Could barely catch a pass to save my life. Often I didn't. But I started every game for 3 seasons.
How do you find the dynamic of going from Kung Fu, which was individual, to football, which is now team? So it doesn't matter how hard you work if everybody else isn't.
Yeah, it was, I enjoyed it because you're right. It was very different. Like we lived or died based on the cumulative effect of the entire team. And like if somebody was slacking, that affected everybody else who wasn't slacking and vice versa. I was fortunate to have a really excellent coach in that first season. Mr. Price, if you're watching this, thank you. He really instilled the discipline into us. He and his coaching staff made damn sure we knew that our school hadn't lost a regular season game for 3 years by the time that I played at that level. So like the floor, the standard was high, and like you got called the fuck out if you were dragging.
What was something that he did that you remember the most, that had the biggest impact on you?
One practice is this moment. So I can't remember when in the season it happened, but we go through our warm up, we do our drills. We're at the end, we're doing our final conditioning, taking a lap or a couple laps around the field. I'm one of the last like 4 or 5 guys in the line, and everybody's taking a knee around Coach Price so we can hear whatever he has to say, and then we're done for the day. Me and the other 4, or so guys cut the last corner, unthinking. Just like everyone's there. All right, cool. We go take a knee. Price calls us out by name, Maynard, and whoever else. Another lap, and what the fuck did we do? And we're just starting to run behind us. Never cut corners. From that day on, I took the bus home from school, and it dropped me off a 5-minute walk from my house. There's an intersection and a patch of grass. I just never walked on the grass again. I knew Coach Price wasn't there watching, but it was the lesson. And like, I knew I didn't have to, but I wanted to hold on to that. Because I felt, I don't know if I would have told you this in these words at that time, but I saw what that commitment to that standard did for me and did for our team. It was the results. It was the record. It was the fact that we kept going to the playoffs, went to the semis. And like, I respected him. I believed that he knew what he was talking about. I believed that he saw the path forward to the goal we wanted. And I was just going to do what he said because I bought into it. And I still consciously and unconsciously hold on to that lesson now in the work that I do and how I am. Don't get me wrong. Like I walk on grass sometimes, but like I don't cut corners when it counts. And that was one moment in my teenage years that has shaped the entire trajectory of my life, which I think is the value, some of the most potent value of good teachers and good coaches.
Well, the football led into the weight training, correct?
Correct, exactly. Because between the second and third year that I played, it was my junior year going to my senior year. It was the end of the school year, and the coaching staff pretty well knew who was going to come out for the team. So at the end of the year, they took us out and they had us do some fitness testing. Dips, pull-ups, might have been bench press, sprints, like a bunch of stuff. Their rule was, they didn't give us an S&C program to do during the summer, but they wanted us to train. So the rule was, we're going to see where you're at now. When you come back for summer training in 2 months, if you're better, you get to play. If you're not, you don't.
So how did they test where you were at?
They ran us through those like pull-ups, quick-ups, that sort of stuff.
40s.
And they did the same thing when we came back for summer training camp. So yeah, like I was certainly not one of the most athletically gifted guys on the team. So my parents had had some equipment in their basement. And like my mom and dad, I grew up with them on Saturday mornings. They would go and train, and like that was just what they did. So I had that example growing up. So I was like, okay, I need to get bigger and stronger for football. So my dad showed me the ropes, showed me some exercises. There was a book called Body for Life by Bill Phillips, which like that was my Bible. I didn't have Arnold's encyclopedia, but like I started lifting, and it was not the first experience with an individual endeavor or sport, because I had the Kung Fu before, but this was a different experience than the football seasons that I just gone through. And it was really fun and addicting to be like, oh shit, I can lift 5 more pounds. Like I can feel the difference. I can start to see the difference. And then, for fitness testing, I did 1 pull-up before the summer. I did 3 at the end of the summer, which was like, sweet.
Wow, using a bro split.
Yeah.
That's
exactly
really good bro class.
I was soaked, man. And I got to play. So, that again was a pivotal thing, because I started training to get bigger and stronger on the football field. When football finished in my senior year in the fall, now I needed something to do for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'm gonna just keep lifting weights like I started to already. So I did that. And I mean, we're talking, this is 2007, 2008. So information was out there for sure, but not as easily accessible. It's just not the same way it is now. But yeah, so I'm just making all sorts of mistakes, but I'm having a great time. And I keep that going through my undergrad degree, where I'm just training for aesthetics, and like it was bodybuilding training, still with the bro split and all that.
Well, it makes sense, because that's kind of what got you into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't have competitive aspirations yet, but like I'm growing up watching like Dana Lynn Bailey and, the people who were at the forefront of the bodybuilding and physique space at the time, Matt Ogus, and we're getting into like the YouTube world too. And yeah, I want to look back.
Was that the catalyst for you to get the degree you did?
Not quite. It added to it. So in high school, when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, I knew I wanted to do something in healthcare. Thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then I didn't know for sure. And I didn't in high school understand how much time in schooling being a doctor requires, but I wanted to keep the door open. So my dad and I, we were trying to figure out what degree route to go. We chose kinesiology. Broad base, you can go into medicine, you can go into physical therapy, you can go a bunch of different ways. So kept doors open. Through the first couple years of my kin degree, that's when I understood like, okay, so it's undergrad, and then it's med school if you get in, and then it's residency, and then it's maybe fellowship if you want to specialize. And my heart just wasn't in it enough. I'm like, I don't know. It's probably not the thing. So that's where physical therapy or chiropractic or teaching, like high school teaching, because talk about the impact of coaches, Coach Price there. There were a handful of other teachers, who left enough of a mark on me, and it ties into my vision loss, which we can get to later. But they left enough of a mark on me, and they clearly cared enough, where I was like, that seems like something that I might want to think about doing. So it was between those 3 things. I shadowed a physical therapist, 1 or 2, and I was like, okay, this seems cool. I get to work with people. It's healthcare. I get to work with my hands. It's science-based, which has always been my jam. So that's really what set me on that path. But the lifting and the football and then bodybuilding and then powerlifting absolutely pulled me further into sports medicine, and specifically working with lifters, and then in the rehab world, because there's still, while it's getting better, there's still a massive gap, generally speaking, with the quality of care and the understanding even of basic strength and conditioning principles. If you go see a doctor or a physical therapist and if you're a lifter or an athlete of any kind, you want to make sure, you want to be heard, first of all. I mean, forget being an athlete. You just want to be heard as a person, and know that the other person you're talking to and you're seeking help from is taking the time to understand where you are, where you want to go, what all the intricate pieces are that have to factor in, so that you have the best guidance to get back there and have the best chance. And that's still a really wide gap when it comes to lifters. So definitely added to it, but wasn't the thing that kicked me off on that trajectory. So yeah, did my kin degree, applied for physical therapy school, didn't get in the first round, or the first time I applied. So that gave me a year to work. Work as a kinesiologist. Essentially, the equivalent probably is like a PT aide at a clinic, which was a really big help when I finally got into PT school, because I had actually done the stuff. Like, I'd worked with people, I'd had the conversations. And yeah, through this whole time, I'm still lifting in the gym. This is getting 2012, 2013, where natural bodybuilding was having like this renaissance again. And I just listened to your episode with Dr. Eric Helms, who's the reason that we connected.
Yeah.
Phenomenal episode and phenomenal guy. But like, I became aware of him and 3D Muscle Journey and Matt Ogus and Chris Jones and Omar Isuf and like these people in the YouTube world. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to bodybuild. And again, we have the roots back in how I started to train. So, started to do that. I hired a coach, and I hired a coach in 2012. He was effective. Like, he got results. He was very well renowned in the bodybuilding space, both natural and enhanced, at the time. Looking back on it, there was definitely a mismatch in terms of temperament and coaching ability, or like specifically what I mean is communication style and willingness to not just make things sound like your fault.
Yeah.
Specifically, I mentioned my binging cycle, which happened as the result of 1, trying to get really lean, 2, getting into PT school, whole new territory, and like having some undiagnosed, undealt with like anxiety and stuff. Big confluence. And I start binging, and I'm telling my coach, hey, this is what's going on. And I'm distraught. And he tries to like guide me through it. And at one point he just had enough, and he's like, this is your fucking fault. Like, you love eating like a pig. Like, you love feeling like this. That guy's supposed to be a clinical psychologist. It fucking hurt, man. Like, I had no idea what to do. And like, yes, I had agency, I had choice. I was the one who was putting the food in my mouth, but like, I fucking needed some help, you know?
Yeah.
I at least, as part of why I love what the 3DMJ team talk about when somebody wants to compete in bodybuilding. Like, it's not just you want to compete? Great. Here's a prep plan. It's like, why? Are you in a place, do you understand what prep entails? Are you sure you're ready? And like, you don't know what you don't know. I sure as hell didn't at the time. I needed somebody to just like take a beat and like see what was going on and ask a fucking extra question or two and help me decide something better. So that coaching relationship, it left a scar. It was a good lesson. It's very much it taught me stuff that I will stand against and not repeat. But I decided that like bodybuilding, I have so much love for it, so much respect for anybody who competes in it. It's just not my thing, not for me. Which then left powerlifting as a rebound girlfriend. Yeah. And it was a much better fit, because now like I was already in the cycle of perfectionism and self-worth being reflected in how lean I was or wasn't. And I was thinking when I binged, I had to make up for it and get back to that level of leanness. And then I was worth what I was worth before. I wasn't thinking in these terms, but that's how I behaved.
Well, another way to kind of look at it is if you have analytical science mindset, you're shifting all the metric accountability from the nutrition where it needs to be primary into the actual training where it needs to be primary, where in bodybuilding, I would say it's inverse. You know, yes, the training matters in bodybuilding. We're not going to sit here and say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter to the same degree as far as periodization and laying programs out as the training does. So it still fills that geek mindset. Like, I like the X's and O's and I like to be able to figure all this out, but it doesn't have to be macros, calories, and energy expenditure.
I got to eat more, which is great.
It can be sets, reps, workload, intensity, and stuff like that.
100%. And that was it. I got to channel how bodybuilding was serving me. Like, I wanted to push myself. I wanted to do something that I'd never done before that I found attractive, and I was going to derive some pleasure from it and like be proud of myself for having done it. And that got to shift with powerlifting. It didn't have to be about like, was I eating 200 grams of carbs and like making sure I was within 5 or 10 grams? And how did I look? Did I get my, can I see more ab veins? Now it was like, cool. Did I lift the weight to standard? Did I lift more? Was it smoother? What was the RPE? I wasn't super familiar with RPE at the time. But also the insecurity that I had at the time, of like, again, coming back to the self-worth. If somebody else was leaner or had a better physique, I felt bad about myself. I was like, oh, they're better than me. Powerlifting allowed me to shift away from most of the subjectivity and be like, cool, you just got to get strong. Are you training? Are you showing up? Are you gaining strength, gaining muscle? If you are, great. So yeah, it definitely was, it was a better channeling medium for me. And it still allowed me to have the discipline and the routine. Because at this point, my life and my schedule revolves around the gym. It's like, when are my classes? When am I training? When I need to go to bed? Like, everything revolved around this stuff because the gym became the sanctuary for me, and it had been at this point for a while.
This is kind of interesting because the Kung Fu kind of came from a result of that lack of self-worth, right? That's why it started. And then that gets replaced with football, which is now a team sport. So the self-accountability isn't going to be as high as it would be in Kung Fu, bodybuilding, or powerlifting. So in a way, you kind of, we could say mask it, but you found help with it.
Yes.
Because now that accountability is being displaced amongst the other teammates. So, hey, it's not all me. It's all of us. Right. And then you get back into that bodybuilding, which is, I don't want to say a higher level, but it's out of all the strength sports, it's the hardest. Because it's 24. Strongman may be at the highest levels because they got to eat all the time.
Yes.
Just on the opposite end, but it's 24/7. It's the hardest. And it is, the accountability is through the roof.
Has to be.
It's astronomical. I'm not too sure if there's anything I can think of right now at this moment that's higher. But it's interesting that it showed its head again.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And then with the powerlifting, how was that? It's all looking back now, right? It's all hindsight, because you don't know as you're going through all this. You're just stupid and lifting big weights, right?
That's what these circles do.
And so looking back in hindsight, were you able to actually get a handle on that with the powerlifting then? At least in the first couple of years of training for powerlifting.
Get a handle on which again?
The self-worth.
Yes, I was, because at the time, now I could look at, cool, did I get my sessions in? Am I getting stronger? Did I learn some more today? And again, in retrospect, like, I still wasn't deriving my self-worth from where I ultimately do now, or in a more healthy way, I would say. But it was helpful and useful at the time because, it was allowing me to channel my competitive drive to be the one who lived and died by the successes or failures under the bar. There's no one else to blame. If it went well, great, sweet, pat on the back. If it went horribly, okay, what are you going to do about it? Again, maybe it's being the oldest of 5 kids. Maybe it's being a recovering perfectionist and stuff. I've always been one to drive for the best that I can be and the best that I can do. And
well, the counter to that is 90% of the time you're going to fail.
Yeah. And we talked about before in the ICU, like, it was the time to use the mental resilience or like the mental strength that I had at that point. What I found under the bar, not that I was looking for it. And in truth, it started with training in my parents' basement, training for bodybuilding. But it was the failure, because as a recovering perfectionist, I fucking hated failing. Most of us probably do. I had to come to grips with that, because if I was going to shoot for things that I hadn't done before, that meant I had to do things that had a a certain margin of failure. There's a good chance you're going to fail and not win the first time, which again, perfectionistic side is like, I don't like that. But then it begs the question of like, okay, cool. What are you going to do about it? Bar doesn't give a shit. The bar's sitting there. It's inviting you to do something if you want it. It's not going to make you. No one's going to make you do it. But if you want it, it's there. This is the process. So learning how to hold that tension of like, I want to win, but if I don't succeed, okay, it's shitty. I don't love it. I failed and I learned. I wasn't happy about it, but I did try to extract the lessons from it and figure out, cool, what do I got to do to be better? And sometimes just being better was just keep showing up.
Back then, how would you define win? Because you said you want to win, right? So that can be winning the meet. It could be breaking a PR.
Yeah.
Like defining the win matters.
Yeah, it does. For me at the time, it was completing the lift, like not missing the lifts. This was pre-competition for me, because I focused on training for powerlifting in 2014, halfway through my PT school degree. I didn't compete till 2016. So yeah, for me, winning was, did I make all my lifts? Did I not fail? That was the big thing. And then over time, I've expanded my definition or how I define wins. Because I mean, one, the natural constraint of you train long enough, you don't make the same rate of progress that you do when you're beginning to train for something new or beginning to train, period. So like, I wish I can get the newbie gains back. Well, I kind of did actually, post hospital. In a way. More muscle memory there.
Right? I don't know if that's the way to go about doing it.
I wouldn't recommend it. Buy my new ebook. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I had to learn, or to come to grips with that. Where's I going with this? Defining wins.
Yeah.
So then it was not just, did I succeed in lifting more weight that day? It could have been the same weight, but was my form a little bit better? Was it smoother? Was it faster? Could I implement this technique that I picked up from YouTube or from the guy or gal I talked to in the gym who definitely knows more than I do? Injury factored into it starting in 2015 for me, because this is back when squat every day was really popular. So I was running my own boneheaded version of that, and I was sumo deadlifting, nothing crazy. I think it was like 85% for a bunch of singles. And I had just finished my PT degree. I lifted this rep. I got halfway up and I felt this tearing sensation in like the top left part of my hamstring. Dropped the weight. I'm panicked and I'm like trying to figure out, did I tear my hamstring? How bad is it? And I definitely strained my hamstring tendon, as I found out later. And again, looking back, I can't be certain, but I'm quite confident that injury happened as a result of, one, poor programming, two, not knowing enough technique. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect to think like, I'm pretty good. There was so much more I could have been better at. Three is trying to stay too lean for too long, which is a holdover from my bodybuilding days, because that self-worth thing of like, I need to be lean, then became, I want to compete in powerlifting. I have to be competitive, which means I got to be in the 181s. I had no business being in the 181s. And I made the cardinal mistake that I try to guide people away from now of like, I cut for my first meet. I know. So, because I thought I had to do this.
Yeah.
So, and again, listening to people like Dr. Eric Helms, who's talked to my colleague, Dr. Quinn Hennick, on the Clinical Athlete podcast a while ago, they were talking about just the incidence of injuries, particularly in physique sport athletes, as they're in a deficit. And I stayed in a deficit for years, which again, now I'd be like, that's stupid. Don't do that. Let's deal with the shit you got to deal with so you don't keep trying to diet chronically and put yourself at higher risk for this sort of stuff. Because now this hamstring is something that I got to deal with. And we know in the research that the greatest predictor of future injury is if you've been injured before, which sucks if you've been injured, because now you're like, all right, well, that's kind of how it is now. That's also why part of why I focused on the rehab as well as the performance side of physical therapy and training. Because again, the gap exists for most doctors and PTs and stuff like that. But then I also had to experience it myself, going through the hamstring injury. I tried to self-rehab. It was on and off for 2 years. And at this point,
2 years.
Yeah.
Well, the calorie diet, I get it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I had a powerlifting coach at the time. He was great. He was a coach and not a physical therapist. I fault him for nothing. We had this thing where we started working together in 2015, prepped for the first meet in 2016. I signed up for 2 meets that were about 6 weeks apart because I knew nothing better. And I did the first meet, it went fine, but my hamstring flared up and I had to pull out of the second one. And then we had this pattern of pull back on intensity and just do a bunch of volume with like lower effort stuff, and then build up, and that feels good. So we start to layer some intensity back in, and then the hamstring flares up again, and it's this roller coaster cycle, which sucked.
Yeah.
So we got to the point sort of serendipitously where Reed, my coach's name at the time, he was getting to the point where he was going to recommend me reach out to one of 2 people, one of whom was Dr. Quinn Hennick, the physical therapist out in California. He's worked with Chad Wesley Smith and the Juggernaut for a time. He's the co-founder of Clinical Athlete, an organization that helps healthcare providers learn to work with athletes better, and helps connect athletes with providers who get it. So at the time, through the YouTube rabbit hole and watching Juggernaut stuff, I found out who Quinn was. And I knew that he did remote stuff, which we're sitting here talking in 2025, like remote stuff is super commonplace. This is 2016 where it happened, but like, especially in the rehab and healthcare worlds, as far as I was aware, that was like less common, where I heard, okay, Quinn's in California. How's he going to help me rehab? What does this look like? So Reed and I had this conversation. We both agreed like, hey, look, it was in my best interest to actually stop coaching for powerlifting with him because I needed to get this rehab stuff sorted out, and we'd figure out what happens after that. I reach out to Quinn, and Quinn sets up a video call. It was on Skype, pre-Zoom, and gets the history, finds out what's going on. And like, we can actually talk shop because Quinn's a competitive weightlifter, but he's worked with elite level powerlifters, weightlifters, people all across the gamut, not just in strength sports, but in general. So like, he knows the questions to ask that are beyond like, what do? You weightlift? Is that like the in the Olympics? Like, no, not that. And he asked about, okay, when did the injury happen? When does it flare up? Is it more of an intensity trigger, volume trigger, range of motion? What does your program look like? Do we have a meet on the horizon? These things that I'd never been asked about, but I was like, whoa, this makes sense to ask. And then he takes me through this screen, has me do a bunch of movements, and we reached the conclusion that, yep, it seems like a proximal hamstring tendon strain. Here's what we need to know, or what we know about tendon strains in the research. Here's what's going to matter for you, and here's what we're going to do about it rehab-wise. And rehab ended up being just like a well-designed training program, which for me at the time, my biggest issues were, it affected squats and deadlifts. Deadlifts were especially off the, it was worse off the floor. The pain happened at lockout. Squats, the pain would hit me at lockout. And both of these affected how much load I could handle, what the volume was that I could handle. So Quinn divvied up the days into one day. It was going to be a lower intensity hinge, but greater range of motion and greater volume. We used an RDL for that primarily. The other day was a higher intensity, lower volume deadlift, which was a rack pull. We used the rack so then we could work the height down, shift to a block pull, get on the floor eventually. We also adjusted squatting, so it was primarily SSB, and I can't remember if we had box squats or not in there, but we needed to get away from the amount of hip flexion and the posterior chain load that came from my low bar squatting at the time, just be more upright and just find that point where we weren't pissing it off all the time. And it wasn't immediate, but within the first 2 months, I felt like I made more progress than I did in those previous 2 years, because it wasn't the case where I was walking down the road to the gym where I trained at, and that little hump in the middle of the street where my left leg would hit it and I get a jolt of pain, and I didn't know how this training session was going to go. Like, is this going to be a good day or a bad day? It was always the rolling the dice sort of thing. I started to get into the gym and actually feel more confident that like there could be pain, but it's more predictable probably. And I also know what to do about it. There are these variables that I get to play with, range of motion and intensity and volume and all that stuff. Plus, if I can't figure it out, cool, I'm going to shoot Quinn an email and like, we'll figure it out together. Going through that process, not just in terms of having better pain management, being able to get back to normal training, but also seeing how that process can look and how it evolved based on what I was feeling, what I noticed, that 100% laid the foundation for the trajectory of my career past that, and what I do now as a coach and as a physical therapist, because it's transferable. I'd used it in the clinic when I was working in clinics. I use it online now, and I use it for a wide range of people. Like, I've worked with people from my mother-in-law, love her to death. She would absolutely laugh in your face if you insinuated she would do anything close to powerlifting. Worked with her, worked with other mutual friends of my wife's and mine who just wanted to get stronger. They had an injury they wanted to get over, all the way up to, I've had 2 lifters get to IPF Masters Worlds, one of whom I stood beside and coached as an honorary member of Team Finland in 2022. And she took 8th in her weight class, which was freaking awesome. So through that spectrum of people, the process principles have largely stayed the same. What we end up doing, like on the ground, varies depending on the person, their goals, what's going on. And it's been a really, it was invaluable for me to experience it first, which I think is part of why, like, I don't want anybody to get hurt. But I think when you go through those experiences, like, you at least have better empathy and you can start to understand more how it is on the other side, and like probably how to guide people who are going through that.
So if we strip it way back,
yeah,
right, because the principles are still going to be the same,
yep,
regardless of the injury or the state of fitness. And when you leave the hospital, I assume you're able to walk a few steps, right? Enough to be able to leave the hospital.
Yeah,
right.
You got it.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
So then you come home, and at this point in time, you would probably, well, I'll ask, the rehab's probably done, right? Because, well, the professional rehab, because you're in this gap now.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
So you leave the hospital, maybe you have 1 or 2 home visits, but you are in that gap.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And that gap, which is whatever. I mean, it's a big gap. It's kind of fucked up that it works like this,
100%.
but it is how it works. So when you're home and you're in that gap and you're at the level where you can do a sit to stand, I suppose, maybe 2 or 3 steps, then right back down, fatigued.
Yep.
Where do you start?
Yeah.
Because you're not starting training for the powerlifting meet. You're just starting to be able to get back to life.
Exactly right. Yeah. You're spot on as far as where I was. So when I left the hospital, I could take some steps with a cane, not very far. I got wheeled out of the hospital, got home. I was still very much bedbound for the first month. Like through May, I was home, but I was still in shit shape. So yes, what I could do were some sit-to-stands at the side of the bed. I could do some light lateral raises or some calf raises. And that was about it. And endurance was tanked because of everything that had happened. And context that matters here. So I've run my coaching business. I've been coaching in some capacity since 2016. I revamped it in 2020, named it Unbreakable Strength, grew it up to the point where I could leave my clinic job, go full-time between that and the healthcare business incubator that John and Frank and Cedric and I were part of. When I went down with HLH, one of our mentors came to John with the idea to merge our businesses. Because at that point in my business, I had 2 assistant coaches working for me, Dave and Tossie. I know they're probably going to be watching this, and I cannot thank them enough for how they stepped up to take care of people. That was one of my first fears. In addition to my family, are they okay? Cool. How about my clients? Are they good? Who's been taking care of them? Because I clearly wasn't. They stepped up big time. Truly can't thank them enough. Cedric, the mentor, came to John with the idea to merge the businesses because John and I, we both were influenced by Clinical Athlete. That's how he and I met. We were co-hosts on the Clinical Athlete podcast together and with Quinn. We got to talk with amazing researchers about all sorts of stuff. We operated our businesses very similarly on the surface. So it was a suggestion to John, and then my wife, Ashley, who was my substitute decision maker since I was unconscious. you know, if they would be willing to do this. John would tell you the story, which if you're ever looking for another guest, you should connect with him. He's a mega fan of elitefts, but he'll tell you the story of how he was so scared that this would be like a Spanish daytime soap opera moment where I'd wake up from my coma and be like, "You stole my life, you son of a bitch." Truly terrified. And Ashley made the decision that I'm so glad she did, which was like, I know Jared would want people to be taken care of, which I did. John was willing to merge the businesses. He had 2 of his assistant coaches. I had my 2. They mashed the businesses together. It was a big mess, but they figured it out along the way. I bring that up because as I'm back at home now, I know the things and I am in the gap, like you said. I have some home visits from PT, but like just limitations of the system, I was mostly on my own. And I knew what I had to do, and it wasn't like I hadn't been working my ass off to get even back home to that point. But I also was wrestling with the grief and just the difficulty of getting myself to do what on paper looks very simple, but demanded a lot of me physically and mentally. So I asked Dave, my assistant coach, who's another doctor of physical therapy. He has experience working in acute care in hospitals. Hey, look, man, would you be willing to coach me here? Because I need to be pushed. I know what I have to do, but I need to do it. And I'm not doing it as consistently as I know I need to. If I have someone who will call me on my bullshit and also recognize the real challenges that are going on here. Again, another thing I'm indebted to Dave for is like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do it. So he was programming sit to stands and banded hip abductions and calf raises. And then when I was ready to walk down the stairs, the 2 flights of stairs to my gym in my basement, it was still the sit to stands and the hip abductions. And then at some point, it was holding onto a bar and doing a super limited range of motion RDL, because I still had I was still very much looking like skin and bones. I had a ton of nerve pain and contractures where my hips and joints just wouldn't move the way that they were supposed to. We got to the point where I was ready to hold on to a barbell and do some benching. And like, we made sure the safeties were set. Ashley was there to spot me, and it was just me in the bar with my feet doing a feet up bench. And it was mostly awesome. Because I had a bar in my hand again. And at the same time, I mean, you see my noodle arms. I've never been a gifted bencher. But like, there's the part of you that's like, yeah, but
you know what you used to do too. I've always said that for those that know, they know what I'm about to say. Yeah. Sometimes the hardest lift to do is 1 plate per side.
100%.
Right? But you get it. You know, a lot of people don't get it, but it's continue. I know what you're talking about.
That's it, man.
It's just so freaking frustrating. It's unbelievable.
It 100% is. So yeah, then it was 45 pounds. Then it was 55 pounds, a whopping 55. And it was, I did a better job at this than I thought I would. But I knew that to have the best prognosis, the least shitty time going through this process, I could not, or it would serve me best to not keep comparing. Yeah, but I mean, you could squat 405 and it was not a big deal. And like, cool. That version of you is dead. He's not here anymore. And it took me a while to get to that point. I didn't use those words at the time, but I had to like let that go. And as I have reflected and like written more about this stuff, there were like these moments of like, I had to break with the past because old Jared ain't here. Cool. It's shitty this happened. It was a fluke as per my hematologist who led my medical team. I have no genetic predisposition. It's a really unlucky hand. Cool. You're here. You can't change what happened. You can only decide what you're going to do moving forward. There are people who need you, and like, cool. It's going to suck. Let it suck. You know, it's not this toxic positivity sort of thing, but holding on to who I was and I used to do this and why me, like I had to process, and I still do process that in different ways between the HLH journey, vision loss, stuff like that. But if I held on to it too tightly, it would be this weight that would hold me down and hold me back. And I needed to break with that first so I could then focus on building. And I didn't know the end goal because, like you said before, like,
so how were you able to do that? Like, what were the steps there?
To build, yeah.
Well, it's because I can apply that to lifters that are past their prime, that are retired.
Yeah.
Right. You just get old.
Yep.
Right. And as you get old, you're not going to be able to do what you were doing when you were 25. But their identity is still wrapped up into, I used to do. Right. And it's so how do you coach people through that? Because it's easier said than done.
Totally is. I'll start with how I did it, and then what I've found as I coach people at different points in their journeys, working through different things. Because for me, I just had to not think about it. Like, I acknowledged that the tendency was going to be there. And like, yes, I did those things. Those happened. The stats existed. We had those moments. Great. I just had to put on blinders and recognize that my focus now needed to be on the process and what is in front of me now, which was going to be doing some lateral raises with 2.5 pound plates, and was going to be doing my 55 pound feet up bench press with my wife to make sure I don't die, because we almost went through that. Not the spotting, the almost dying part. And like, that's just what it had to be, because I knew that if I did this enough, this would give me the best chance at being somewhere better. Still didn't know how far that was going to go. At this point, medically, things are looking better. There's still a whole lot of uncertainties, and I'm being followed by like 3 or 4 different specialists and doing all these sorts of appointments and follow-ups because we're talking about a rare disease. It's like, I think it's 1 in every 500,000 people or something like that. So like, there's still a lot of unknowns, but I knew that this was going to be the best shot that I had. And I still got to points where I was like, fuck, man, I just wish I was further. I wish this was easier. I wish. And whether I needed to or not, it was helpful for me to give space to that and just acknowledge the suck and not shut it down.
Because all this kind of stemmed from a compromised immune system.
Yeah.
Right. If you're training and you're coming back, regardless of whatever that recovery modality is or where you fall, you're putting a stress which is going to compromise your immune system.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's the whole balance and the whole periodization of all this.
Yeah.
As well as you have to develop your lung capacity. You got to develop all these other energy systems that were compromised because you were on your back for 5 months.
Yep.
So how's that balance in? Because you do a little too much.
Yes.
And then you can set yourself back, as you found out in the hospital.
Yes.
You can set yourself back tremendously.
Exactly. That was the words echoing in my mind of like, your problem isn't going to be the work. It's going to be the rest. Because now the strategy that I had through my whole life of like, just work until you can't, that was not going to work here. There were going to be actual potentially dire consequences if I did that, not just for me, but for my family, for my clients, for my business, for the people who needed me. So like, it is not an option anymore to work yourself into the ground. Serving myself and serving my people means recognizing the limits that didn't exist like this before, but they do now. So you better fucking figure it out.
So are there metrics that you're using at HRV, anything like that, or just how you feel?
More feeling at the time. I hadn't messed around with HRV through this recovery period, mostly because like, one, I had just been poked and prodded in so many metrics through all these different disciplines and tests that I wanted fuck all to do with them. Plus I also didn't know how reliable it would be just given the circumstances. So it was more about how I felt physically. Could I get up the next day and do my 20-minute workout again? Was there anything untoward that like my wife noticed or I noticed or whichever healthcare specialist I saw noticed? That was mostly my gauge. And if I could get up and do it and I didn't, actually, no, I can't even say if I didn't hate it, because there were days I just absolutely did not want to do it. And I hated every minute and it hurt and I was in pain and I needed to pop more pain meds after, but like it got done. So like that was the guiding light at the time.
How long until you got back to what you would consider normal?
15 to 18 months. It's a range because there wasn't a point, like even the first meet back, the one before that one. Actually, no, that is the first meet on the right side. Yeah. I didn't feel normal, fully normal then. How would I define normal? Like part of it was like numbers. everything except for the deadlift and my dots on that first meet back were sub PRs. And to be clear, it's not like I rolled up into this first meet like, I'm going to PR everything.
Yeah.
It was not that. No, Dave, it was the most gratitude I'd had for anything almost ever, excepting my wife and my daughters. But like, I remember this would have been my fourth meet. And I was in the back, and like, we had an idea of what my numbers were going to be on the day. And one of my good friends came to handle me so I didn't have to worry about stuff. And it was just like, cool, I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to make as many lifts as I can. We're not going to be redlining things, but like, we'll have some decent weight on the bar and that'll be cool. But I had a smile on my face the whole damn day because this wasn't just for me. Like, this was the first meet that my wife and my daughters got to see. And in my mind, me being there was a victory for everybody to share in who had anything to do with like supporting me and my family. Cause we had people who like my wife hadn't met online, but knew through the internet. Someone was in our area for a conference. He went to the grocery store, spent like $300 of food and dropped it off at my family's house while I was in the hospital. The Honey Badger Project, the healthcare business incubator, the team pitched in. One of the members who lives closest to me came and filled up our freezer while I was in the hospital. People who were far away and couldn't do anything and wanted to help, they donated blood, they donated plasma, because I needed a ton of blood transfusions. All of the medical professionals who, had anything to do with the journey to this point, it was for them. And I've had the privilege to talk to a couple people through like some Instagram or Facebook comments, people who were in the ICU, people who remember me, and I've gotten to thank them. It feels so small and like so insignificant, just me saying thank you, at least to me, just knowing the impact they had on me and on my family and therefore on everybody else who I'll talk to and influence for the rest of my life. But I've gotten to thank them, and me on that day behind the curtain, I'm just like, whatever the fuck happens, this is cool. I am here. This is not just for me, it's for them. We're all winning right now. But you asked normal.
Well, you're pointing out how you felt on that day, and there was gratitude and all the other kind of things. Yeah. But compared to other sporting things that you've done and other things that you've done in your life, where's this rank as far as gratitude and all those things outside of having your children? The highest. Easy. And this was what, 2023? 2024.
Yeah. That meet was May 25th, 2024. It was just over a year out of the hospital because I left May 1st, 2023.
Okay. And now that you're back, I don't want to say everything's a new normal, right? Mm-hmm. So you're back in your new normal. You're having the old arguments with your wife again. Your kids are driving you crazy.
Yes.
Training's a bitch to be able to fit in because you have all this other stuff. All these other things are going on. How do you find that place of gratitude that was there that day so you never lose it again?
I'm really glad you asked because some of it is instinctual. Some of it I need to build reminders and systems around. Because exactly what you said was what happened. And one of my mentors had said, hey, look, I've known people who've gone through life-changing, life-threatening situations. It's remarkable how fast the day-to-day bullshit creeps back in. You get anchored back to that. And I didn't disbelieve him at the time. I was still in the hospital. I'm like, okay, cool, heard, log that away. And then I couldn't tell you when because it's insidious. It creeps in. But like,
it's life.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, fuck. And that post didn't go well. I'm tired. I missed that lift. And like, this client needs XYZ. And so like, I need reminders. That's why I got this tattoo, Memento Mori. Like I've been a fan of that phrase in Stoic philosophy, even loosely back since 2017, give or take. And for anybody not familiar, it means remember you must die in Latin. And the Stoics use that to remind themselves that like we are all going to die, and we don't know when, I sure as shit didn't know I was going to have the brush that I did. And because we have finite time.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying what you're watching, make sure to take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe.
It's a reminder to live intentionally and to give your time and energy to the people and the things that actually matter, and to pull yourself out of the hubbub that just comes with life. So, I mean, it's not like I got that tattoo and now I remember all the time, but it is an external reminder for me, at least. I do make time to pray regularly in the morning and in the evening, and like those moments of prayer and reflection make it easier for me to become aware of when I'm just caught up in the riptide of stuff, and be like, okay, I should like bring it down a little bit, or at least do something to bring my consciousness or myself, get my head out of my ass, essentially. Could be talking to my wife, could be, reading some scripture. It could be like just doing something else and coming back to the realization that like, I shouldn't be here according to the stats and according to my medical team. The reason why I earned the nickname Miracle Man from some of them is because after that last treatment, I was still getting worse. They were prepping for palliative care. I had no business stabilizing after that treatment because by all accounts, it had failed. They gave it. I wasn't responding the way that I was supposed to. So like, cool, we're prepping for end of life care. I shouldn't be here. And yet I am. And I don't have to be here. And
but that can also throw a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
And guilt. It's because the next thing that comes after that is, why am I still here?
It is. You're 100% right. And it factors into the vision loss as well. Because with that, I have a genetic condition called choroideremia, or CHM for short. It's a genetic mutation. It affects men primarily, and it means that the retinal cells don't produce a certain protein, so they start to die over time. You start to notice it in kids when they're night blind. So like, that's how my dad noticed something was up with me. We were at our cottage, we were walking back. It was like a parking lot. There was a street light. There was a big pothole. Anybody with typical vision would have seen that, avoided it. Your boy face planted. So that started the journey of like going to eye doctors and trying to figure out what's going on. In normally lit conditions, like I was fine, not a problem. I of course started wearing glasses in grade 9. I went through driving school. I almost had my like independent license. We call it the G2 in Canada. I was driving with my dad, not vision related. I just was a shit driver. So I took a turn poorly. My dad was like, you need more lessons before you get your G2. That coincided with going to the optometrist, who noticed something funky on my retinas. She didn't know what, but she told my parents. I was 17 at the time, so still a minor. Told my parents, hey, look, he shouldn't drive. I will maintain that was the wrong move to just tell them and not me, for 2 reasons. 1, they're my fucking eyes.
Mm-hmm.
2, it put my parents in an awful situation where all I wanted to do in life was drive. I told you I would have killed to get a cup of ginger ale. I would have probably killed to drive. And I was asking, hey, you're going to the store, can I drive? And they had to find excuses for me not to do it because they didn't know how to tell me. They didn't even know what it was yet. Nobody did. So it led to this big blow up, and like, sorry, mom and dad, if and when you watch this, it was very emotional for all of us. It led to more testing. We thought it was a disease called retinitis pigmentosa. And then through genetic testing, we found out it was CHM. It's progressive. It's currently incurable. They're working on stuff like gene therapies and cell therapies, but we're talking optimistically 5 to 10 years out at this point for it being even remotely viable. And even then, it'll slow the disease. It won't bring back vision. So that was I think it's fair to say, because I can't remember anything else, that was my first real brush and like encounter with grief and why me, and like, why is this happening? Talk about being angry with God. That was absolutely part of it for me. And I also talked about putting blinders on to not comparing myself pre-HLH to what I was doing in the rehab process after. When it came to the knowledge that I'm going blind and there's fuck all anyone can do about it, barring some miracle of either God or biotech, I just had to stuff that way down, and like, it was this storm cloud off in the distance that I knew I'd get to eventually, but for right now, I'm just ignoring it and focusing on other stuff, which served me. I got through stuff. But to what you said about guilt and anxiety, why am I here? These two things came together because even though the doctors, both eye specialists and otherwise, haven't said this and probably won't be able to say it because HLH is rare, so is CHM. CHM is like 1 in 100,000 people. You put two of them in the same person, who knows? I'm very confident that because CHM is genetic, it has an inflammatory mechanism that kills the cells in the retina. HLH is a hyper-inflammatory syndrome. I'm very certain that it sped up the rate of decline. And the visual tests confirmed that over the last couple of years. So I hit the legal blind threshold end of last year. So it was this experience of going through HLH, having this long road after for me to get to anything close to what I will call like normal. Like I am recovered. There's still fallout. There's still effects from it, but like, cool. Here's where the road to recovery like kind of ends, or where I think I'm back to whatever extent. And then now there's this next challenge, which isn't new. It's like the character was introduced earlier in the story, and now the character's back, and now they're the big baddie, and you gotta fucking figure out how to deal with them. And the question that I have to answer is like, even if it's not an answer to why am I here, it's at least an answer to what are you going to do with this time? And my answer is, I believe that I have experiences and messages and some expertise to offer so that when I do die, whenever that ends up being, my goal now is just to die empty. I just want to give all that I can to help people. And at base minimum, I don't know what people are going through. Other people objectively have it worse than I do, even though I went through a medical crisis that is nearly unheard of. If us talking about this means that somebody hears this and like they feel like they're not alone, or they need an example of someone who's gone through some shit that maybe is different from what they're going through, but like they're in a better place, or they got further along when like they could have easily just like cashed it in. I want to at least give people the chance to hear that, because I think it's better to be here than not. And I want to offer whatever I can to give people even a small sense of hope and like encouragement that like, yeah, the road's hard. I'm not going to pretend like I know it.
Well, listening to your story and listening to other podcasts that you've been on, there's several anchors that you use throughout your life, right? So the two of them are obvious: your family and your faith. I mean, so they should be, highest. And then the third is the strength training, right? I'm afraid to throw out powerlifting because I don't want everybody to think that this means it needs to be competitive powerlifting. But the training, the powerlifting has been that anchor throughout kind of all this as well, and will maintain to be that anchor in some capacity moving forward. The interesting thing between those three anchors is this is the most physical one, right? Where you got a spiritual one, a mental one, and then the physical one. And going into your hospital stay, had you weighed 30 pounds less, you would not be here. No. Because the wasting happens. Yep. Right? So in a way, you could say that the powerlifting saved your life, right? Yep. And in a way, right? It
absolutely bought me time.
It could have been just 70 pounds obese, and we could,
sure.
It's a viable conversation.
It is. To that end though, I mean, you're right. It bought me time, and I had this conversation with my dad a couple weeks ago. He's like, look, your muscle mass bought you time. You were still like on the in the spiral, but you're 100% right. The thing that the other big impact the muscle mass had, and I had this conversation with doctors and nurses, was that the concept of muscle memory, which we've seen in the research. I remember reading about it from Chris Beardsley before, and like seeing that if you reach a certain level of fitness or fatness, like it's easier to get back there than it was to get there in the first place. So cognitively, cool. I can jive with that. I never fucking expected to test it like I did. But that muscle mass and that muscle memory, it played a huge role as far as how quickly and likely how completely I was able to go through that process. Yeah, because without that, I mean, who the fuck knows where we'd be?
Well, the other thing it's provided is a measurable metric on where you're at, right? So if even coming back, knowing that you may never be at the same strength that you ever were, but you were able to go from 45 to 55 pounds.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. It's like, no, wait a minute, that was 10 pounds better, which means the 55 can become the 65.
Yep.
Then it becomes something to strive for.
Yep.
Which is that anchor, like a goal,
yeah.
right? Goals, it's a weird word for me sometimes because you can overshoot it and under it. An objective. Sure. I like objective better than goal sometimes.
That hits something.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes somebody will hit a goal to bench 300 pounds and they actually smoke it. It should have been 360, but they were too big of a puss to actually try. So they purposely undershot it to make sure they always achieve it and they don't make it a strive, a reaching goal, to be able to strive for.
Yeah.
And having that in there is, you can always change it. You know what I'm saying? So if it is that 500-pound deadlift, but then you're 70 years old and blown out hips and everything else screwed up, it's 350, whatever it's going to be. Yeah. But it's something to strive for, to work for, that anchor to be able to put in there.
Yep.
And I think that's what the powerlifting provides in there.
I'd agree.
And kind of more so than a lot of other sports because you can do it forever. That's what I said when we showed your deadlift at the very beginning of the podcast. You don't know everybody's story that's competing on that day. That's just your lift, that story. Some people are like, 500 pounds. Whatever. 300 pounds. Whatever. Yeah. They're just like reading their books, scrolling on their phone. Yep. They don't know the story, of everybody competing. Everybody competing's got their story.
Yeah. 100%.
Right? And that's why I love the sport, is because it provides the outlet for people to live their story.
Yes. And
to tell their story. No matter what their strength level is, it's still that story. Your story is way better than somebody I would sit down with an all-time world record.
Appreciate it.
Think about that. You know what I'm saying? It's going to resonate more. It's going to relate to more people.
I appreciate that. And exactly what you said is like, it was what blew me away the most at the first meet that I did. It was in this warehouse CrossFit box on the east side of Toronto. And, I scoured YouTube to figure out, all right, first powerlifting meet, what's my checklist? And like, what do I need? And I'm there, and all these big guys and gals who are just absolute monsters in the best way. My wife is there, girlfriend at the time. I don't think we were engaged, but she's there with a flower in her hair and like a denim blouse. And she looks at me like, I'd never be here if it wasn't for you. I'm like, that's true. But I was blown away by how supportive everybody was, which is one of the things that I love about the community to this day, and what I love to invite people into, because like you said, I didn't know anybody's story. They didn't know mine, with one exception. Like the meet directors had us put an X on our singlet to let them know that if it was our first time out there, and that was really helpful in case we missed like a technicality or something like that. But people were super supportive, and I'm like, this is fucking awesome. And that has stayed the case, at least in my experience. By and large, you get some assholes here and there, but you get that everywhere. The majority of people that I've encountered, both in person at meets, whether I've been competing or coaching at the local to national to international level, and people online, are like really encouraging, because you showed up and you're putting yourself on the line. I mean, what we're doing is not life or death, typically speaking. But like, you're willing to get under something heavy and try to move it, and you're willing to risk failure and, put your name in the hat, just like everybody else had to for the first time at one point, and everyone continues to do that. And for me, that earns respect. Just, if you're here, I'd love to know your story, and I've gotten to know some people and their backstories, how they got into powerlifting, and I love hearing that stuff. But even if I don't, and you're here, cool. I respect you for being here. I've experienced that myself. And it was cool meeting Naomi. Like, I got to commentate at the Ghost Clash in 2024. and, reading about her training journey, getting back to the Ghost Clash and a bunch of the other lifters, understanding that story. One, well, it gave me a personal appreciation for it. And then as a commentator, I feel a great degree of responsibility. I don't commentate so much these days, but I want to make sure that when that person watches it, or when their family watches it, or the training partners watch it, they get a sense for the story and they get to really appreciate to a greater degree. Yeah, she's squatting 500, and here's what she had to overcome to get there, because then that makes that 500 a whole lot more meaningful.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty awesome thing.
So where did the "you're not done yet" philosophy come from? Obviously, it's that bad question. I'll take that question back.
Okay.
The philosophy was laid out through the whole life.
Yeah.
Where did the statement manifest?
So over the last, where are we now? We're in August. Over the last, we'll call it 4 or 5 months, as things have unfolded with my vision. So again, I was diagnosed as legally blind just because my visual field is constricted enough where that it meets the standard. If I'm looking at you, I can see pretty clearly. I've got some peripheral vision. It's just complicated. But I met that standard. The rate of decline of my vision is now faster. Like before, if we're talking, because I've been involved in multiple studies where they flew me out to Edmonton, Alberta, just to measure things every 6 months or so, just to see the disease progression. Year to year, I wouldn't notice a difference, functionally speaking. There were even some visits where they're like, yeah, you're actually doing better on these tests than last time. I'd have to look on the time scale of 3 to 5 years, and then I'd be able to tell you, yeah, I used to be able to see this much, and now my blind spot has grown this much. Now it's the time scale of months. So 6 to 12 months ago, I can see a difference compared to what I see now. So it's kind of that storm cloud I talked about before, that I didn't think about. I knew it was there. I'd have to deal with it eventually, but it wasn't right now. Now we're in the fucking storm. And I have to look at what I've built my life around, because I returned to coaching. I am a physical therapist. Again, I hold my license. The people that I work with as a coach. It allows me to work with people all over. And John and I, we amicably separated our companies out of love for each other and what we do, because personally, we've never been better. We're just on different trajectories, in part because my vision is changing, and there's no clear path that way in terms of exactly how fast, exactly how it's going to change. But I'm in this place now where I have to create systems and make decisions for my career path forward that I have to surround myself with the technology and the people that will allow me to continue to serve my client base. And my aim is not just to maintain where we're at. My aim is to continually improve the experience and make this a fucking industry disrupting standard of care. That's what I aim for anyway. And to grow the team. To do that, I need to, again, figure out the system. So using screen readers, learning how to be much more systematic than I ever was when my vision was much better, because I have to be, otherwise I miss stuff, and that's just not acceptable to me. But it's also this understanding that I can't coach the way that I currently do forever. It's visual heavy. I'm reviewing people's form, I'm zooming in on the screen a little bit more, but I can still do it. I just won't be able to do that forever. So it comes down to this soul searching process of I guess it is the question you asked before. Why am I here? We've talked about faith playing a big role. I'm like, Lord, why? I'm trying to figure out, what am I in a position here to do? What am I being called to do? And I know beyond the shadow of a doubt, because of responses to me sharing the story in the ways that I have, that it's resonated with people. It ranges. I've gotten these messages of well, I didn't want to go to the gym today, but I'm going now, to I've gone through something similar and I thought I was the only one. And this gives me hope to keep going. I'm going through chemo next week, not me, but the person who's saying this. And I'm going to keep going here. I can't ignore those things, or at least I'm choosing not to. I don't have to be here. I do get the opportunity to choose what I'm going to be spending my time and energy on. And it's, for me now, it's not only serving people on the ground as best I can with the coaching that I do, whether they're coming back from injury, like I've done with people. One of my clients is a physical therapist. She had a spinal fusion. Her back felt like it exploded on a warm-up deadlift. And like she called me from Alaska on a travel PT contract, unable to move off the floor, and had to get her landlady, who she just met, to take her to the hospital. I didn't coach her all the way through, but she did her first powerlifting meet last year, and she squatted just under 300. She pulled in the mid threes, and she benched 180 or so. She never would have thought she would have competed. I mean, fuck, at some point she was like, am I just not going to be in excruciating pain? So like, I got stories like that out the wazoo. So my choice is to continue to serve people like I know that I can, because I've gotten those results and I've helped people to get stronger than they thought, get out of pain, be more present for their families, their businesses. So that's what I choose. And also beginning this public speaking journey is what I'm viewing it as. Starting to look at what I've done, what the story's been like, and ask myself the questions that we're going through here. Like, how did this happen? What is the overarching message? What were the necessary steps you had to take to get there? And that's really where, sort of trying to squeeze the juice out of that idea of like, you're not done yet, resonated, because that's how I felt. Granted, not all the time, but it's how I felt in the hospital. Like, cool. Like, you're not dead yet. You got work to do. Go fucking do it. It's what I had to come back to when I was legally blind, and that felt like, fuck, okay. It's not a total surprise. Just how quickly it came was what was surprising. Cool. What are you going to do about it? And I believe that I'm not done yet.
Well, if we look at this coaching thing, and I was thinking this as you were talking, is yes, it's visually heavy. Mm-hmm. Without mentioning names, let's just think of a lot of the different powerlifting coaches that we know. Mm-hmm. And their only expertise mm-hmm. is visually heavy. Mm-hmm. That's it. They just looks fucked up. This is what they say. Yep. And they choose, and they do that. And then every other attribute associated with them sucks. You know, they don't know how to communicate that. They don't know how, they just know how to kind of like yell and kind of like do this, or, you know, arch or whatever the fuck they're going to say. That's really, so when it's only visually heavy and that's the only attribute, it's a shitty attribute. Mm-hmm. It's actually one of the worst ones, mm-hmm. right? Because as you go down through, communication is going to be the highest attribute. Mm-hmm. You know, how did that feel and so forth. And the ability to communicate what should actually be done, you know, with, now if we're just talking the technical aspects of the lift, mm-hmm. we're talking, man, I've never really thought about this one. So I'm just going to guess 40%,
sure.
Like 40% of the 100%, like yes. programming and recovery, all these other things factor in. Mm-hmm. 40% is probably too much. Like 30% would be the whole. So the 70% all factors around the recovery, the nutrition, the communication, the programming, all those other factors that the best output you're ever going to get from somebody is going to be when you have the most fluid communication with them, to where they can be honest, you can be honest, and there's knockdown, drag outs. So but that builds that trust and that rapport, which brings it back to only 30% being that visual aspect. Yeah. Right. Where the 70% is always going to trump that 30%. Yeah. So it's, in a way, because technology, I mean, if the technology can tell you the biomechanics of the lift, mm-hmm. right, which I am sure there's AI modalities to be able to tell you bar position and all this, because if you can't completely see anything, it can be able to tell you that. That will, in your ability to have to communicate this in the verbal sense and in the just the aura sense. I don't know what to call the physical, realm that we all, but there's shit going on. That's why I do these in person. It's going to be heightened because you don't have that visual one, right? Which can be that advantage.
Agreed.
You know, with that, you know, as long as, or it could be somebody else, just how they could tell you, here's what it looks like. And if you built the right rapport, like, you know what questions to ask. Did the bar fall forward? Like what happened with, you've been doing this long enough. It's people do the same shit, you know,
Squat's a squat.
five of the same, you know, five of the same mistakes for everybody.
Exactly. Which is a blessing because the squat moved that way. I'm like, all right, it's one of these 5 things.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, there's ways to look at this where it could play into the advantage because you're going to have to be forced to actually listen more than what most coaches do. And every coach says they do. And I get that. Some do better jobs than others. But what if that's all you got? Agreed.
And the 2 things that come up from this that support it. One is a friend of mine, her name is Shelly. She was someone she's a mindset coach and stuff. And she's who started to encourage me to think about, okay, cool, not cool. Like you're going blind, that sucks, grieve it, feel it, all the things. What does that allow you to do? Or who does that allow you to become because of it? You could say in spite of it, but the challenge was because of it. And what I've landed on is exactly what you said. Like, I get to lean into more of what's always been a bit of a superpower of mine. Like people notice that I'm very empathetic. I've been fairly good at listening and communicating with people. Some of it's intuitive. I've worked my ass off at it. And it becomes even more the foundation for me now, which gets into like the second thing, because I can say all the things that I want. The thing that doesn't lie are the results. And like, are the people that I work with getting what they want to and need to get? And one of my clients, her name is Rhea. She's awesome. She's in the UK. So Naomi and I bonded over some UK stuff earlier today. 7 weeks out of British Masters, this woman, her PR is 175 kilos, which she hit last October, just prior to her and I working together, I believe. Yeah. So she's warming up, 70 kilos on the bar, first or second rep, back instantly hurting, shooting pain down her leg. Rhea's a healthcare professional too. So like she and I both figured it was like some disc related stuff, but she was on the ground. Other gym members had to come unload her bar. She was in tears. It was all the things. And 7 weeks out of British Masters, which we'd been prepping for a bit, or at least had on the horizon for a while. She couldn't bend over. She couldn't fucking sit. She couldn't bend over. She was in tears doing that, excruciating pain. And so we were in this place of like, can she compete? Does she want to compete? We're going to figure this out. But what I believed I needed to do, and what Rhea has since affirmed was needed, was like make space to not fucking try to fix it right off the bat, but like this shit sucks. And she, I believe, would be somebody to tell you that she trusts that I understand how this stuff feels. And I understand the hit that your identity takes and that your mental health can take when you derive so much anchoring and strength from what you do in the gym. For my whole life and journey, you've seen the different iterations of like what I gain from it. When I don't have that, when I can't have that, that hurts. So like, don't try to fix it right away. Certainly I guided her, but like we made space for all the messy, squishy, emotional things that come from being a person and a high achiever trying to go here and then something stops your path. And then we worked the process of like, all right, cool. This is where I did for her what Quinn did for me and what I do for all of my other clients. We're going to figure out what your triggers are based on having worked through this myself and with other people. I'm pretty sure we're going to want to go this direction. We're going to want to go really light, like we're talking goblet squats. We're not talking touching a bar for like squats. We're barely hinging to start. We're just trying to calm shit down. And then as we go day by day, we're leaning on the communication piece. This is why I brought it up. And like ups and downs, like mostly downs, because she was in physical pain. It caused the mental consequences of all this stuff. So like, I wasn't there to try to fix it for her or have all the answers. I certainly offered what I had. But I needed her to feel safe. And that can sound kind of weird, especially.
No, but it's,
you know what I mean?
It's important because a couple things are at play there where especially with the spine, when you provide that space,
Yeah.
because the injury is a stress,
Mm-hmm.
and our bodies are going to process that mental stress the same way it would physical stress, and all of, the whole Charlie Francis cup,
Mm-hmm.
full type thing.
Yep.
And if you're trying to add all this other physical recovery stress on top of that mental stress, it's not going to help.
Mm-mm.
It's the cup's full.
Yep.
There's too much of a problem there. And then the other thing it does, if it's enough of a gap in there, it's kind of like Stu McGill surgery without a knife.
Yep.
You're letting the bone,
Mm-hmm.
heal during that time period, and then they can process it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a weird time because they need to process it, because
Yes.
they're going to ask themselves, why are they still doing this?
Yeah.
Can they still do this?
It's grief.
Do they want to do it? Is grief.
Yeah.
It most certainly is grief. And then the process, then when they get ready, if there's enough time, it doesn't happen in 3 days.
Yeah.
We need to preface that.
Yeah,
People are gonna be like, oh yeah, I took a week. I figured it all out.
That'd be great.
Yeah. You sure you did?
I charge a lot more.
Yeah. You figured it all out in a week. It doesn't work that way. But then they can come back with a different purpose.
Mm.
And normally that injury, if they're coming to you, normally that injury is coming from a lifter that's been around for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So it's accumulated over time. It wasn't acute. They might think it was acute, but it wasn't acute.
Mm-hmm.
It's been something that's been manifesting for a long time, which, as you being a trained professional, it also is going to make you think, what else is going on?
Yeah.
Because the back's messed up, but odds are probably the shoulders are a little fucked up too.
Yep.
Thoracic is probably fucked up.
Yep.
Yeah, they're doing this long enough. So how can we manage all this?
It's all that plus what else is going on in family life? And without telling any of Rhea's story that is not mine to tell, there was family situations that that was very stressful. That's going on at the same time. She's a parent. And just to keep using her as the example, this would apply, the details might be different, but to your point, it's not just the physical mechanics of okay, cool, you're a conventional puller and you squat this way in flats, and is the accumulation of all these things that came together. But it's also these other things that you don't know about and you can't know about unless you, one, have the trust and create the space to receive that. Because otherwise people aren't going to fucking tell you their deep, dark secrets. They're worried about whatever family member. And to some extent, you have to make the effort to find that out. You have to know, I don't know about magic questions, but you have to be looking for that stuff. You have to, I believe, be oriented to want the best possible outcome for that person and do whatever is in your power to try to get there.
Yeah, I think in a way you're just saying, listen well.
Exactly. Much more succinct. And it's a skill which I've gotten better at. I'm still actively working at. But Rhea, we worked through that process and it was absolutely up and down through those weeks. And it was about week 3 that we had to make a decision of, are we pulling out of British Masters or not? And we kept her in the gym. We tried to, again, calm things down and then essentially make educated decisions about when was a good time to start trying, okay, let's try a pause squat as opposed to a box squat. Let's see how you do off the floor instead of on blocks. We had to decide, are we going to go for it 3 weeks out? So we tested, not maxes. We did singles at 7, 8. And then you could make the argument, what is a 7 or an 8 in that situation? And it was, for us, we defined it as look, if your pain is manageable and it doesn't take you out of what you need to do the rest of the day and it comes back to baseline in 24 hours, we'll call that a win. And we found out that she could squat to depth. She could pull off the floor. So we were in business. She rocks up to British Masters and she squats 10 kilos off her PR and she deadlifts 10 kilos off her PR and she benches 2.5 keys under. Big smile on her face the whole time. And going back to what you said about you don't know the story and why I love trying to find out the story when I have commentated. I believe the commentator's name was Samantha. Rhea is very well known in the powerlifting circuit, especially in the IPF world, over in her neck of England. But Samantha had said on the stream, the reason why she's smiling so big is because 7 weeks ago she couldn't bend over and she was trying to do squats in her front room of her house. which for me, just having front row seats to that whole process felt really gratifying that Rhea got the prop she deserved because of how much that that meant to her. So yeah, I mean, I'm good at this. I've become better over time and I'm actively working to get better. I get to have impact on people in a very direct way here, from competitive lifters to other coaches and clinicians who just like, they spend all day giving everything to everybody else, but they've got next to nothing in the tank for themselves, or they are their version of how I was home from the hospital. I knew the things. I needed somebody to just like be someone I trusted to both give me space and kick me in the ass when I needed. I get to be that for these people that I work with now. And I'm deciding to try to amplify that, you know, wherever I can go on stages, having conversations like this, just because I believe that this message, this idea, even just this hope that like, you're not done yet, not promising the world, not promising you can be absolutely better than before. And like, it's going to be like it never happened. I mean, I talk about coming back stronger. I should qualify, coming back stronger doesn't always mean physically, or doesn't always mean in the exact same ways as before. Stronger. And like, for me, being stronger, coming back after all this, means that I can look at my daughters and they still tell me like, Daddy, you looked really scary. And I was really scared when you were in the hospital. I'm like, I don't swear in front of them. I try not to. I'm like, I know, kiddo. But I came back and we're here. This shit brought us closer together. And like, I wish it never happened? I wish the pain, I especially wish the people who hurt, especially my family, my wife, my daughters, my parents, the people who experienced that, I wish they didn't have to. The upside to it is that we are closer. And again, I'm choosing to use that pain to the fucking fullest extent that I can, in whatever way that I can.
Well, life is hard. I mean, that's just the fact.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody's definition of hard changes based upon how much shit they've battled.
Yeah.
Right. So your definition of hard is going to be higher than somebody else's definition of hard, but it's still the hardest hard they've ever done. You know, so the message is still the same, no matter what level that hard is. It's not leaning into when things are hard and trying to back away and avoid the things that are hard. That's the problem.
Yep. Because
then they don't develop the capacity to be able to take the harder things. As with your condition, you didn't have a choice, right? So it's that kind of gets left out there. It's not like, hey, yeah, I wanted to fight this really hard thing, and here it was. It just shows up, right? So you have to find the tool. You have to use the tools that you develop through the adversity that you had to go through before that, to be able to help to get through that. And I don't want to say that. I'll let you frame what I'm going to say after I say it.
Yeah, sure.
It's not that hard when you're in that position where it's in the hospital and it's basically life or death, right? Because you have no other choice, right? You either want to live or you want to die. But even if you want to die, they're trying to keep you alive anyhow, right? Where it's really hard is where you're at now, right? Because now it's voluntary. You know, you can choose if you want something to be hard. You can choose if you want to have this conversation that you don't really want to have, that you know that you need to have. You can make that choice. And you see what I'm saying? Where I'm hesitant because I don't want to sit there. You get what I'm saying? It's like, it's kind of fucked up to say you don't really have a choice, so you have to be able to fight.
How dare you? No,
you know, you get what I'm saying? But
no, you're right.
I got to find a better way to frame that. But it's different than when you do have that choice.
100%. I'll double down on that.
Yeah.
No, I would say it the same way. In the hospital, it is live or die. And again, eternally grateful to all the people who did their damnedest to make sure that I was holding on to life when it got real hairy and after. But yeah, it is adapt or die. Shout out to Joe Sullivan. whom I've never met, but just using your name now, it becomes simple. It doesn't mean easy, but it becomes a simple choice. And here and now, yeah, I'm far removed from like being in the ICU and like talking about palliative. I'm here. Yeah, I'm dealing with vision loss and whatever, but like I'm here. We've got normal day-to-day shit that gets on my mind and like pisses me off. And like there's a lot of normalcy now, which I'm grateful for. And it becomes harder because I at least have to become more intentional about how I'm moving through this. Do I want to continue to fight or not? And fight for me is like learn the skills that I have to learn to keep serving people, to provide for my family and make sure my girls are taken care of. Cool. It's not easy, but you're right. There's something to be said when your feet are held to the fire, which is what was happening in the ICU and in the hospital. The barbell, I mean, through all of its iterations for me, has been the voluntary hardship that, again, I didn't start training because I thought one day I need to make sure I have the mental fortitude to fight back from the ICU and come back to my family. But choosing to do the hard shit, choosing to push myself, choosing to show up for the workouts that I don't want to show up for, choosing to, put a little extra weight on there or push myself on the accessory movements. All those things taught me the discipline and the resilience that I absolutely needed in a big way for these legs of the journey through HLH and now through vision loss, because that's out of my control.
What's also an attribute there is to learn how to filter through the noise, right? Because I'm sure with the vision loss now, there's a lot of noise, then there's a lot of reality, and you got to, and there's a lot. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Just in powerlifting drama, the same thing. Like there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of reality. Yeah. And being able to focus and make the conscious decision to focus on the closest thing to reality, because I think we live in a simulation, by the way. But you never really know what really is reality or what's not reality. We can only get as close to what we can get to it, because our own brains are filtering, biases and all kinds of shit all the time. Always. But the closest to it, but we know that the noise isn't. Yep. Right. And that's a conscious decision there. That is part of, as I'm looking through this, you're not done yet. That's a big part of that. Like if all you're going to do is let the noise dictate the direction you're going for, then I kind of think you're done. Right. Because everybody else is going to decide. Agreed. Life is going to decide where it's going to kind of push you. Oh yeah, 100%. And like, as we talk about this, Dave, like me landing on this message of you are not done yet, it's still like, there's definitely a lot of imposter syndrome that can well up, not just from that, but I'll circle back to it, but also the inner critic that bubbles up, like, you're fucking legally blind. How can you coach powerlifters? And having to answer those questions, because that's an example of the noise for me. It's the, that inner dialogue that points at things that are objectively true. And then is, at least for me, it's this mechanism of trying to brace for like, what's the worst case scenario? What are people going to say? What are they going to think of me now that I carry a fucking cane with me? Because once you start carrying that stuff, like you're seen, and you can never be just a normal person just walking through the airport. Like, you are very seen, which is good for safety, but there's a lot of emotional weight that comes with something like carrying a cane. And not that I've got a monopoly on this stuff. This would be true for any disability, other things that just fundamentally change how you see yourself, how you interact with the world. And like, as I'm sitting here talking to you, someone I've looked up to for a long time, talking about this message of you're not done yet, it is something I believe. The inner critic's still there. It's like, how are you going to tell people who are going through their shit that they're not done yet? Maybe they are. How are you going to tell them they can come back stronger? Maybe they won't. My only pushback on that statement is, what is done? Yeah. Like, that's the only, like, what, like, if I'm to tell myself you're not done yet, like, what's done? Yeah. Like, how will I know I'm done? When I'm dead? I guess but to me, I'm not done. Yeah. So that's. Yeah. And
I'm glad you're asking this, because I'm not going to pretend like I've got this all figured out. Like, it's still fresh. To me, I think that what the definition of done is going to vary from person to person. And I couldn't tell you,
Sure,
but I can tell you what I've, at least from my perspective, see. Not only, and you can correct me if I'm wrong and what you think on this, but like, not only do you have your personal accomplishments in terms of personal performance, lifting wise and coaching, but like this entire brand and company, lift, learn, pass on, right? Like to me, it does not look like you're done, because if you were done, if you said, you know what, that's it, I did what I want to do, I'm just going to like chill out, I don't think you'd be spending the time and energy that you, at least it looks like you do, talking to people, asking these questions to extract the lessons for the purpose of serving the people who hear it. To me, it seems like there's a purpose and a mission. Maybe the purpose, maybe the objective, like you said before, changes over time. But like there is an objective, and you take actions in accordance with reaching that objective. If there's no objective, no destination, you're just
no. But as you're helping people, then it's going to become, how do they find theirs?
How do they find
their objective?
Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of kids are lost.
100%.
Right. And I mean, I can use the standard answer of, find their faith. Mm-hmm. That one covers one big block real quick.
Sure.
But that plays into that as well. Like, how are they going to, because as you're speaking, the message is going to resonate, with a lot of people. It's going to motivate, all the other kind of things. But the core thing is, how do we get people to find, what some people will say their why and all this. And where I think people begin to misunderstand that is they think it's definitive and it's not going to change.
I see. It's unchanging, and like it's
yeah, like, well, my why is to do this.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
Right. Okay. But what happens if you can't do that anymore? Is that really your why? You see what I'm saying? My why is to break all-time powerlifting records. Right. Okay. Now you can't, you have prosthetics or whatever it is. And so why did you want those all-time powerlifting records? And it's like the 5 whys, right? Yep. You just keep asking why until you get down to the root cause. Yeah. You just want to make a difference. Well, why do you want to make a difference? So I can feel significant. Oh, why do you need to feel significant? Yep. Right. So it kind of boils down to 100%. Kind of what we were talking about from the very beginning that you kind of found with the training. Yes. Is to find that self-worth. Everybody's got to find their self-worth.
100%. And for me in this place, like, what is my why? I dig down deep. I mean, I've got a suspicion. I can't tell you for sure, but I know from what we talked about, like, I don't have to be here. And I do believe that, God's giving me an opportunity to do something, and I want to bring people to him. That doesn't mean that I'm turning into a televangelist. And that doesn't even mean that necessarily what I'm talking about is overtly religious. That is the core for me. If we dig way down deep, that's what it comes back to. I want people to feel and experience love. Love means different things depending on the language that we're talking about. The definition that I gravitate towards comes from Aquinas, of desiring the good of the other as other. Meaning that for you, whatever is good for you, truly to love you, is to want the best for you without needing that to be good for me. It's the idea of like tough love or being a good parent. Like you're not the good guy in your kid's eyes all the time, but if you're a good parent, you're doing it because you love them and you want to make sure they understand where boundaries are and they don't become a person that you hate being around, and that will be a problem in the world and society at large and all the things. And I think where I'm at in this journey, which again, it's like, this is more of a recent development as far as what is the message? What are the lessons? Because I can tell the story and it has an impact on people, which is, I'm grateful for. But like, what is there? What are we talking about? What does it mean to not be done and all that stuff? And like, I believe that any person at any point in their life is going to will have to define what their objective, their why, their mission is. For some, it's going to be their family. It might be becoming a better husband and like learning how to not flip out and let your undealt with, patterns boil over in like yelling at your wife, which was me. God bless my wife. Early in our marriage, like Jocko Willink reading his book, Extreme Ownership, was a turning point. Like the idea of a leader will own everything in their world. I'm like, fuck. That means that that's me. Mm-hmm. The arguments, there's two of us in it, but like, I got to do better here. That was my why explicitly. And I mean, it's not like I don't try to be that, but that was my main focus for a number of years. It's like, how do I learn how to communicate better for the purpose of loving my wife so she's not married to an asshole? And then our kids came into the picture, our twins first, and then our youngest after. How do I become the father that provides for these kids, but also who I can be proud of at this infant stage and then this toddler stage? And it's this arms race because my twins are 7, my youngest is 5. And like it really is an arms race. They're forcing me to not just accept, how to say it. They're the ones asking me the questions, why? Mm-hmm. Oh, don't do that. Why? Well, shit, I got to think about that now.
Yeah.
You know? And like, they're also keenly observant of what I say and what I do and if they match. And it matters to me to be somebody who at the end of my life, my wife and my daughters can look back at me and say like, he was someone we were proud of. That is an objective, and that will likely never change for me at this point. It hasn't always been there because, like we said, you know, I wasn't always in this season of life. But like, cool, that's the objective. Who do I have to be? I have to be honorable. I have to be consistent. I have to be bold and do the shit that's like scary, you know, for them. It's not just for me anymore, you know. Me navigating busy airports and like having to advocate for myself and all that stuff. Like, cool, it's not just for me. It's partly for me because I want to be as independent as possible, but it's for them. It's for the people who I've not yet interacted with, but like who might hear something that maybe they hear now, maybe they hear it in 2 years, maybe they hear it at some point, but maybe they just need to hear it. And like, that doesn't happen unless I show up. Mm-hmm. So.
Were there any other topics you wanted to talk about I didn't bring up?
No, I think we ran through them. This is the real shit, and this is this is it, man. This is me laid open here.
So how can people find you?
Instagram's gonna be the easiest. Jared.unbreakable on Instagram. You shoot me an email to Jared at unbreakablestrength.net. If any of this stuff hits home, if you want to talk about it, if you want to ask me any hard-hitting questions, if you want to geek out about Star Wars, like my Star Wars tattoo on my arm, hit me up. That would be the easiest.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming out. This has been great.
Thanks, Dave.
We're done.
Appreciate it, man.
All content you see on this channel and at elitefts.com is created by, take a guess, Elite FTS. If you want to help support the content, head over to elitefts.com and pick up literally anything that you need to be able to get more jacked and strong.